Here in just a few hours, prosecutors will resume their case in the murder trial of three men charged in the death of Ahmaud Arbery. The judge Monday rejecting the defense request for a mistrial and blasting one attorney for comments objecting to black pastors being in the courtroom. CNN's Martin Savage is live for us in Brunswick, Georgia. Martin, tell us the latest here.
Morning, Brianna. Yeah, for a time it looked like this case was going to come to an abrupt and ugly ending, not because of what was said on the witness stand, but because of what was heard and seen in the courtroom.
In the context of this trial, we object to his presence in the public gallery inside the courtroom.
An explosive morning in the trial of the three men accused of murdering Ahmaud Arbery, with a still smoldering racially charged debate spurred on by defense attorneys over black pastors in the courtroom.
If somebody is in the gallery here as a member of the public, that's their right to be here, and I'm not going to track individual members of the public who come in and out of this courtroom.
Defense attorney Kevin Goff objecting to Reverend Jesse Jackson's presence in the gallery.
How many pastors does the Arbery family have? We had the Reverend Al Sharpton here earlier, last week. Which pastor is next? Is Raphael Warnock going to be the next person appearing this afternoon? We don't know. Your Honor, I would submit, with all respect to the Reverend Jesse Jackson, that this is no different than bringing in police officers or uniformed prison guards in a small town where a young black man has been accused of assaulting a law enforcement officer or corrections officer.
This a recurring issue for William Roddy Bryan's defense attorney in a trial where race has been front and center. Jackson arrived at court Monday morning after Goff said this on Thursday.
We don't want any more black pastors coming in here, or other Jesse Jackson, whoever was in here earlier this week, sitting with the victim's family, trying to influence a jury in this case. If a bunch of folks came in here dressed like Colonel Sanders with white masks sitting in the back, I mean, that would be a problem.
He was actually referencing the Reverend Al Sharpton, who was in the courtroom on Wednesday to support Arbery's family. Goff apologized to the court on Friday, but brought up the issue again Monday. Judge Timothy Walmsley rebuked the defense attorney.
Now, with individual members or individuals coming into the courtroom, I will say that is directly in response, Mr. Goff, to statements you made, which I find reprehensible. The Colonel Sanders statement you made last week, I would suggest maybe something that has influenced what is going on here. You need to understand, everybody, that your words in this courtroom have an impact on a lot of what's going on.
Ahmaud Arbery's neighbor, Carol Flowers, was called as a witness. During her testimony, Arbery's mother began to cry when a photo of her son alive was shown. The emotion leading to a break. After that break, Goff asked the judge to again take account of every person in the gallery, saying he was fearful certain individuals could sway the jury by being present, adding,
Your Honor, the case law out there in mob cases and other cases demonstrates all the ways that presence in a gallery can influence jurors in a case. And I certainly don't mean to suggest that Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson or any other pastor belong to a mob, but at the same time, we are talking about organized behavior by whoever outside the courthouse leading up to this case, where we have all these community leaders fearful that the city's going to burn down.
That's when all three defense attorneys moved for a mistrial, claiming their clients were not receiving a fair trial, also citing Arbery's mother's emotions.
Based on that outburst, the court is not granting a mistrial.
Jackson said this later outside the courthouse.
As for challenging my right to be there, the judge stood with my constitutional right to be there and my moral obligation to be there. I'm about people who are in need, whose backs against the wall. That's what we do. So we're going to keep staying with this family. It's a priority and focus of ours now.
The trial resumed in the afternoon with a series of forensic experts testifying about fingerprints, fibers, and enhancements made to a cell phone video. That video shows Arbery's death on February 23, 2020, after he was chased by Gregory and Travis McMichael, an armed father and son, and their neighbor, William Roddy Bryan. The three pursued the 25-year-old in their pickup trucks before cornering him and Travis McMichael shooting him. The prosecution presented the weapon used in the shooting and even showed images of holes in Arbery's shirt.
Can you show the jury how close that gun would be to that T-shirt?
A firearms expert for the Georgia Bureau of Investigations testified that Arbery was shot at close range.
The end of the shotgun was very close to that fabric when it was fired. But to have something that large, it had to be made by in my opinion, made by the gas from the tearing of the large amount of gas that exits the end of the barrel of the weapon. Also observed is the rolling of the fabric where the edges of it are seared and rolled up.
Arbery's mother reportedly kept her eyes closed during the replays of the cell phone video of her son's last moments. She later said she was satisfied with the prosecution's case.
The state is doing a very fantastic job in presenting the evidence in the case. I'm very confident that we will get justice for Ahmaud.
As he was getting into his car last evening after trial, I caught up with attorney Kevin Goff, and I asked him what's next. He implied he was going to be busy last night working on a new motion. What that motion is about, we're not quite clear, but it's pretty obvious we haven't heard the last on the issue of black pastors and the threat he believes they pose to this case. Brianna and John.
Wow. Martin, thank you so much.
Joining me now is Charles Coleman, civil rights attorney and former prosecutor and trial attorney. Counselor, thank you so much for being with us this morning. We don't want any more black pastors here. How many black pastors does the Arbery family have? What's the strategy behind what defense attorney Kevin Goff is doing?
Well, the strategy, John, is simply to try and appeal to the lowest common denominator, the lowest common factor that he can in terms of throwing out a Hail Mary in hopes that somebody is going to leak something to the jury and potentially get someone on the same wavelength that he is in terms of picking up what he's putting down. He has decided he's going to go all out in terms of putting down the dog whistle and picking up the bullhorn around what it is to shout and spout racist rhetoric as a means of trying to connect to the 11 white jurors on that jury as opposed to the one black. I have long said that race is the 13th juror in this case. It is being held in Brunswick, Georgia, and from the outset, what we saw with respect to jury selection and how this trial has proceeded, and with Bryant's repeated attempts to keep certain people out of this courtroom, it is undeniable that he is trying to play the race card when it comes to securing something for his client.
I don't think you would deny it. I really don't, in a way. William Barber, by the way, last week told Brianna, and I thought it was very notable. He said, I'm not a black pastor, I'm a pastor.
Right.
I'm a pastor. So these are pastors who are in the courtroom there, and what the defense is doing is just blatant. There's no subtlety to it. I want to focus in on something you said there, though, because all these speeches have been made with the jury out of the courtroom, out of the courtroom. So he's got to be thinking then, or hoping, that somehow they catch wind of this.
Not just that, I think that's a big part of it. I think he's hoping that at some point something leaks and he's able to connect with one of the jurors with what it is that he said. Not necessarily directly, but through what's going on in the news. We're talking about it. It's being talked about everywhere. He's hoping that someone gets wind of it and begins to think about it as they look across the room into the gallery of that courtroom and they see these prominent figures there. But there's another angle to it as well. He's trying to do whatever he can to make an issue for appeal out of for his client in case he's convicted. I don't think that this is a viable issue for appeal. I don't think that it's an issue that he can ultimately win on appeal if his client is convicted, but it is something that he's trying to create a record around in case that happens.
We heard the judge call it reprehensible.
Yes.
What more could the judge or should the judge be doing in your mind, if anything?
Well, I think the judge did the right thing in this case in terms of calling it reprehensible, in terms of denying the mistrial and being very direct. You know, John, this reminds me a lot of the famous 1857 decision of Dred Scott versus Sanford. And in that case, the Supreme Court of the United States said that the black man in America had no rights which the white man was bound to respect. And I think about the whispers of Dred Scott along with what is going on with this case. Ahmaud Arbery, in the eyes of the McMichael family and Mr. Bryant, did not have the right to go into a house and look at what was going on and go jogging. And now, according to Bryant's attorney, Mr. Go, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, and other black pastors do not have the right to sit in a trial and comfort Ahmaud Arbery's family. That family deserves to be comforted by anyone who they well choose, and anyone who is sitting there not trying to influence that trial, but interested in justice for Ahmaud Arbery should be allowed to be there.
Would he have a similar objection if it was a white pastor?
Great question.